Hello, podcast family, and welcome to Regulation Revolution, where we are igniting a revolution to help the world effectively manage and respond to their emotional experiences. It's not about what happens to us, but how we react that creates harmony or chaos in our lives. Emotional regulation is a complex process involving many factors. We offer this podcast to provide insight for you about how you fine-tune and powerfully decide to transform your complex emotional states into empowered instances of self-mastery, peace, and increased awareness. Instead of having your emotions control you, you can learn to have control over your emotions. The following program in no way constitutes therapeutic counseling and does not establish a therapeutic relationship or offer any premise of confidentiality with any listener or participant. For more information, visit us at regulationrevolution.com. Welcome to today's episode of Regulation Revolution with your co-hosts Amy Reamer and Barry Vassar, Heart and Mind. Amy is a licensed therapist, professional speaker, and teacher. Barry is a pre-licensed therapist and practice manager at Heart and Mind. To find out more about Heart and Mind, please visit heartmindrba.com. Hello, podcast family. Welcome to Regulation Revolution. This is Barry Vassar. I'm here with Amy Reamer, and she has a special prop with us today because we're going to be talking about the hippocampus. But that's a big word, so we're going to call it the hippo. The hippo keeps the score. Amy, who is your little friend that you have with you?
This is my little hippo.
Does your hippo have a name other than Hippo?
I've never named the hippo. Maybe I need to come up with one. Maybe our viewers can give me an idea. Maybe that's what we need. We need a name the hippo contest.
There you go. Well, our title is The Hippo Keeps the Score. So what does my understanding of the hippo is that the hippocampus stamps memories, that it just kind of remembers things. Now I love watching the hippo go. If you do not watch our podcast on YouTube or any place else, you are missing a treat today. Tell me more about the hippo.
So the hippo, which is named for our hippocampus, which is a little teeny part of our brain. There's actually two. We have two of everything in our brain that is related to memory. So a lot of hippos, you'll see they have the mouth that opens really, really wide. So we always talk about it swallowing information, likes to learn, is swallowing memories and information. So our learning and our memory are really, really tied to the hippocampus. So when our tigers are awake and fully awake, we've talked about how the owl flies away. Well, the hippo goes under the water. And then we have trouble sometimes with learning and memory and recall. So it's really important to know about school. And I usually let folks know that when I'm doing therapy, a lot of times the hippo isn't necessarily a part of the therapy, which is probably going to be mad at me because it's like, hey, I'm important. When I'm training, though, I like to make sure we include the hippo because it's really important for parents, teachers, adults, like everybody to sort of understand. Mm-hmm. And then in therapy, sometimes I do bring in the hippo, especially if there's a lot of school-related issues going on. So we want the child or the parent to understand maybe what's going on. So like just for example, if someone has a lot of sensory issues, and they're overwhelmed with the lights and the sounds and things in the school system, they may not be taking in new information very much if their system's in tiger mode and that hippo's gone under the water. So we're going to talk a little bit more, let everybody know a little bit more the nuances of the hippo. So I think our tiger episode has already been released. I think the owl one is out also, right? Or the fire tiger. The tiger has been released. So hippo is our last of our three animals to talk about to delve into what's unique about them.
One of the questions that I get about, we always talk about tiger comes out, hippo goes under. So is the hippo still recording? Is the hippo still, it's just we can't access it? And I'll tell you where I get that example from. I used it in talking with somebody, and maybe some of our listeners or viewers can relate with this. You have your car keys in your hand. You and whomever start to get into an argument, a disagreement. So tiger comes out, hippo goes under, owl flies off. Right after this encounter, you say, where did I put my keys? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I tell people that's because your hippo wasn't really paying attention to where you put them, or either you don't have access to that information. And as proof that your owl has not come back yet, you do ridiculous things like look in the freezer. Mm-hmm. You're not even thinking logically. You know you did not leave the kitchen, yet you're in the bathroom looking for your car keys. And then when everything comes back. But the question I got back was, the hippo did record where you put the keys. So even though the hippo was underwater, it was still paying attention that the keys are over there. It's just the rest of my brain can't access what the hippo knows. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know the exact nuances of all of that, whether it is or isn't recording. It might just be more of an implicit memory, which is that body-based sort of memory, as opposed to explicit, which is where we can kind of play it back like a videotape. So since you can't play back in your head where you set your keys down, you're not necessarily remembering it, but the body remembers. One of the reasons we call this episode, The Hippo Keeps the Score, which is after Dr. Bessel van der Kolk has a book called The Body Keeps the Score, talking about trauma and the impact on the body. So, but the hippo keeps the score a lot with what we're learning in our memories, and also categorizes memories, whether they're really, really important for the tiger to know or not. That's how they work together a little bit.
I've described the hippo in the past as being a very valuable part of everything. But the hippo is also, in my opinion, an instigator. And so, I'm walking down the street. I see a hippo looking at me. I'm walking down the street. I'm like 10 years old. A big dog comes running out and chases me, scares me to death. The hippo makes this association with dog bad, to put it simple. And then a year later, 20 years later, whatever, a dog starts barking. Hippo says, hey, tiger, I remember big dog barking, they chase us. And then when the tiger comes out, little hippo to poke the bear, or the tiger, goes under. I don't remember what I'm supposed to do. I don't remember that not all dogs are out to kill you. So it's like to me, it's great to have it, but it also wakes up the tiger and says, I think we're in trouble. I'm going under, you take care of it.
Yeah. Well, when the three of them aren't working well together, then yes, it goes off kilter like that. So, right. The hippo's job is to mark certain memories as scary and traumatic, so that the tiger will, be aware of it, right? I always say it's kind of like you put a red flag on a file or something like that, so you can find it faster. Mm-hmm. So, the hippo is doing that kind of marking so that the tiger can recognize those types of things faster. However, it's the owl's job to let both of them know, like you said, not all dogs are bad, or that dog is still behind a fence, it can't get to you. Like, it's the one doing sort of the processing and the reasoning of the present moment, of what's actually happening now versus what happened in the past, what is in the memory. And
so if everybody's working
away, then it goes sideways of what the hippo is telling the tiger.
So if all three are kind of working together and we're all online, there is land of make-believe. It's that same sort of scenario. Dog barks. Hippo says, instead of saying, hey, tiger, wake up, maybe hippo says, hey, owl, what are we up against? Owl looks over and says, it's a chihuahua with no teeth inside of a cage. So the tiger went, y'all need me? And the owl says, hey, hippo, tell the tiger we're okay. And hey, tiger, you can lay back down. This is cool. If it all works smoothly together.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, I'm sure a neuroscientist could probably lay it out exactly how it happens, and who says what to whom first and how it goes. But to me, it's just this world of the three, right? And it's are they communicating? Are they sharing? Are they listening to each other? Because then you might have a tiger that doesn't trust them and doesn't believe them. It's like, nah, I'm just going to go ahead and roar anyway. And I'm going to run anyway. I don't care what it is. And that's when we look like we're acting irrationally because we're reacting to something that's really not a threat.
And I don't want to because I had somebody give the hippo a bad name. Sorry, hippo. And I said, no, I said, just like all the other parts of the brain is geared towards our survival. It's a machine for survival. So we need the hippo to tell us, hey, remember the last time you went 70 and a 55, you got a speeding ticket.
Mm-hmm.
We need the hippo to tell us these different things. But with the hippocampus, there was one little note that I saw in some of our stuff here. That I wanted to bring up. I was talking with a family about their kids and such, and we were talking about the hippocampus. And I said, if the tiger is, and you kind of touched on this, if the child is in a chronic state of stress, maybe there's something going on at home, maybe there's a loved one in the hospital. I mean, it could be anything. They're in a chronic state of stress in school, and the hippo is under. They're not learning, or they're not accessing that. So we're quick to say a lot of times, and I'm not knocking the diagnosis of it, but the child has attention deficit disorder because he's not paying attention in the classroom. Well, if you're worried if mommy and daddy are getting divorced, or if your favorite uncle is going to pass away at the hospital, you're not focused in the classroom. Your tiger is out. Your hippo is under. Do you think that's true of adults, that when we're in a chronic state of stress as adults, it's the same type of thing, where the ability to learn and grow?
Yeah, it certainly can be. Like our level of functioning is going to go, potentially go down. Doesn't mean necessarily we can't, because some of us can, do put the box on the shelf and concentrate right now, right? Mm-hmm. So just depending on someone's age, where they're at developmentally, how capable they are of doing that. And we all know that sometimes when there's something stressful going on, distracting ourselves is the best thing we can do to not be stressed, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that every time there's something going on that people are going to be, just shut down and not be able to do anything. That doesn't necessarily happen, but it certainly can. One of the kind of things we've talked about with the owl and the tiger is the age of them when we're babies and how they develop, because we have a full-grown tiger at birth, but the owl is a baby and doesn't fully grow until like mid-20s. And our hippo is young when we're born and doesn't fully develop till we're about 2.5, 3 years old. So it does develop faster than the owl does. But if you think about when people can actually think back to their earliest memories, so that explicit memory, I call it like the it's the VHS memory, if you know what VHS is. You can put a tape in and play it back. And so that memory comes online when the hippo is fully grown. And so that's why you don't necessarily recall things that happened when you were 1 or 2. You might when you were 3, you might when you were 4, just sort of depends on the, trajectory of your hippo. And if a child does experience chronic stress, chronic neglect in those first few months and years, then their hippocampus may be really small. And so they may have memory issues, they may have some learning issues. And so, and they've shown, there's some slides out there that show like a normally developing 3-year-old versus a 3-year-old that came from an orphanage with a lot of neglect. And so, and you can see just the physical differences in the brain, and the hippo can certainly be impacted by that. The implicit memory though is there because, babies do have feeling and memory. This is where the hippo keeps the score, right? That it's recording whether they're getting fed or someone's showing up, or if they're loved or warm or cold or wet. Like they know those things, but it's more being laid down in meaning and feeling and in the body. So I have a special interest in the impact of medical trauma on the body. And for kids, a lot of times that's like NICU stays or having to have a surgery when they're really young as an infant or a young toddler. And the body remembers that, but because the owl was such a baby and the hippo wasn't fully developed yet either, it's a very confusing memory because they can't really put words to it. They can't really talk about it, but the body will get activated in other ways, maybe going to the doctor or going to the dentist, having something medical done. They're freaking out and total panic attacks more than your normal not liking going to the dentist, right? Like totally getting into fire tiger mode because the body remembers being held down. The body remembers having a tube stuck down its throat. Remember, not able to breathe or being in pain or being alone and separated and not knowing where the parent was because their smell and their heartbeat, everything else wasn't around. And so there's a major difference sometimes in how implicit traumas that occur when we're in that implicit memory only phase versus explicit memory where we might be able to make a little more sense of it and we can, work with it a little bit more.
Well, it's interesting. I was talking with my son just this past weekend, and it's interesting how this all ties together because he has a very vivid memory of me holding his head while he was screaming in pain, but he doesn't know what it was about or what happened. And he was like a year and a half. And he had fell and he had to get stitches. And so they had wrapped him up in one of these little papoose type things to hold his arm still. The nurse was holding his feet, but we needed to hold his head still. So what he remembers is me holding his head and like looking directly in my face, the tears and everything else. But he doesn't remember falling. He doesn't know what he hit his head on, doesn't know how old he was when it happened. I know because I was, of course, older and a different age. But the memory of daddy's holding my head while somebody's hurting me is what stood out for him. And I was like, well, I was getting you stitches, son. But
yeah.
So
yes. And that's such a piece that I think we don't recognize is that we know as the adults, this is helpful to you. This is going to prevent infection. This is going to it'll be over in a quick second. You're not going to die from we know that. But infants and toddlers don't. And so they're tigers in full on mode. And here to them, the parents being complicit in them being, tied up and injured. And so if you think about that way, it's like, oh my gosh, I never really thought about it that way, that I'm pinning my child down, to have someone do something that doesn't feel good.
Right.
One, that situation, obviously you couldn't, when you have an accident like that, you can't really prepare kids. So when you're going to the doctor, you can prepare them. You can talk about what a shot is. There are books, there are videos, right? Like you can let them know and you can tell them it's only going to last and show them how long a second is, snap your fingers and it's over, right? You can do a little bit of preparing, when they're a little older, not like a 6-month-old, but, an 18-month-old, two-year-old's got language, right? So, because their owl's been growing, and so they've got some language. But yeah, so yes, and memory, is really powerful. So maybe his hippo grew hugely that day because he needed it may have been very close, in 18 months. I think he's probably pretty close to, full-grown hippo was getting there. So. And when it was something that intense and scary, right? It's like it really laid down a red marker. Yeah. And so
he doesn't remember the move, the change in houses that took place. He doesn't remember when he started walking. He doesn't remember when he started talking, when he first ate solid food. No memory of any of that, but he remembers that day.
Yeah. Well, and we say, traumatic memories, scary memories are I always call it like a branding iron. And it gets seared into our system, and all of the sensory pieces come in with that. And so it's whatever you were hearing, whatever you were smelling, whatever you were tasting, like all of that is part of the memory because the body's involved. And so, and they've done studies and they show that the sense of smell is the sense that's most closely tied to memory. And so I know I may have shared this, I think may have just shared this story before, but relating to the hippo, in Nicaragua and meet my daughter's paternal grandmother, and she was like around 90-ish age, and short little lady, and it was at night, and so I meet her, I give her a hug, and I got this major wave of emotion related to my grandmother. And even though she was an older lady and she was shorter like my grandmother was, so hugging her was probably pretty similar, but it was because it was her smell. And I'm going, but I couldn't place what the smell was. And just like, she smells like my grandmother, and my grandmother had passed. So the feeling I got was like some sadness and grief, from this memory, because basically this hugging this woman evoked memory of my grandmother. And so I was like, just like, this was really weird experience of why my grandmother would come up here in the middle of Nicaragua. And so I'm talking to my mom. It was her mom. It was my maternal grandmother. And I said, telling her the story. And I'm like, well, she smelled like Granny. And my mom had to think for a second. And she goes, well, Granny always smelled like baby powder. And she lived in the country on a farm. And, women would use baby powder to, manage sweating and, keep yourself dry and all of that. And I was like, that's it. That's what the smell was, right? Like I couldn't place it at the time, what I was smelling. I just knew it smelled like my grandmother. And so it's amazing sometimes how certain smells, certain sounds, music. I mean, think about when you listen to old music from back when you're like in high school. And that music might be, uplifting, and it was like a fun time, or it could be heartbreaking because it was kind of that first love just broke your heart. Like, like music, it can, and sound and smell can really tie in to feelings associated with certain memories.
It's interesting. Now I'll turn the tables on myself. I had to do some exploration on this. So I have a thing. Love my dentist to death. Been with the same dentist 30 years, I guess. But I actually feel the pain of the drill before it hits my tooth. And he's called me on it. He's looked at me and he said, I have given you 9 shots of Novocaine. Right? Your lip is drooping. You can't even open your left eye. And he said, I don't even hit the surface with the drill. And you start wincing. And I realized that it was a combination. It was an auditory piece of thing, the high-pitched sound of the drill. Because I could sit in the chair, cleaning, everything else, high-pitched sound of the drill. But all at once, and it was just 1.5 years ago, I remembered. So this was a locked away memory. This is terrible. Not all dentists are like this. If you're a dentist listening, this was back in the day. But I remember my pediatric dentist got so frustrated trying to pull one of my baby teeth that, this was back in the 70s, he straddled me in the chair. The nurse held me down. And when he pulled the tooth out, he actually threw it down and said, now the DAM, thing is out. That's how frustrated he was. But I got to think about what else was going on during that time. There was drilling going on. There was this going on, other, things. But just that feeling, I think, of powerlessness.
And the smells, right? Like all the smells smell the same.
So it's you got the smell, you got the sound, plus you had this. That I think about my son. My mobility has been limited. I'm in a helpless position. Somebody bigger than me just pulled a tooth out of my mouth. And so, but all of that came back to me at once. And I was like, so how much of this is really just, I'm not even feeling the drill. It's not even there. The nerves are dead, but just hearing the sound, I feel the pain. And so, but that took 50 years to figure out. So I'm just wondering what else we have stored in that hippo. like and I wondered about that too. I don't want to go too far off topic, but I wonder how many people go 30 years, 35 years, 40, 50 years, whatever, nothing whatsoever. And then all at once they start having nightmares, or all at once they start having anxiety, or all at once. And it's tied into something that the hippo stamped that on this cognitive level, they can't remember, but the hippo does.
Yeah. Well, and there's also things out there like anniversary dates of certain things, and we may not actually be consciously thinking that that date's coming up soon, but the body knows. And so now I don't know exactly how that works. I've read different research and different things. Like some of it it's really more environmental. So like just think about like if something happened, we're in the middle of May, right? And there's a lot of pollen here in Virginia, and the leaves are green, there's a lot of rain. And so environmentally, if you're living in the same place, then you're going to get the same cues of what the weather and the environment was like when something happened before. Maybe lost somebody or a car accident or something like that. But there's also, obviously cues visually of where you go. I mean, there was an intersection one time that I was going through the green light and a pickup truck ran the red light, and he slammed on the brakes. And it was literally one of these things, like I look left, and there's a grill of a truck coming, and he does end up stopping like right before he hits my car. And so nobody's hurt, nobody's injured, or anything like that. But it was one of these things, there was going to be nothing I could do. It was just going to happen if it were going to happen. But luckily he was able to stop in time. And then the longest time going through that intersection, I could feel my heart rate raise. I'm looking before I go through the intersection, like left, right, more than, you might normally do. Even though, obviously this is a different day, a different time, that truck's nowhere around, but my body remembers what happened on that day coming through there where I almost, was hit right on the driver's side. So, and again, even though, because fear and trauma isn't necessarily about what happens to our body, it's going outside of our window of tolerance for something could happen, something scary like that. So in that situation, even though I wasn't actually harmed, it was really darn close and it was scary. And so whenever you have something like that happen, your body can, your hippo can kind of lay down a memory of that intersection of not being a really safe intersection. So you need to watch out, be a little bit more careful. Now we know the owl knows you could get hit by a car in any intersection at any time, right? Not that this intersection isn't really any more dangerous than any other intersection. Really isn't the intersection at all. It was the driver, right? So, the reality is, that the danger is out there. But the way that our body works is that we sometimes are going to label something as more dangerous. So keep an eye out. And so, we've told that story. If, you get assaulted and you were next to a rose bush and, your spouse sends you roses on your next anniversary, you may have a panic attack because the body has now the hippo has stamped a memory with all those senses together. But if the owl overrides it, then you're okay. It knows, oh, that's something that happened in the past. That's not what's happening now. And a lot of times you do have, if you don't make connections between things, that's sometimes when the tiger sort of takes over, because it's like, well, if the owl cannot cogently explain to me why that these roses are not dangerous, I'm just gonna, like, go into survival mode anyway.
But I was talking to an individual in personal life, just outside of the whole counseling realm. So somebody I know, we were having a conversation. They were talking about their one of their children. Said, I don't understand why he's going off the charts. It's like it's like he's got spring fever or something like that. And I said, and I remember just saying to him, trying not to do the counseling thing. I was like, and it was in March. And I said, what happened March of last year? And the person responded, oh, that's when we separated. was like, so child experienced loss, change to routine, March of last year, well, between March and April. I said, the child's body remembers that. So the child's body is saying something bad is going to happen. I'm going to lose somebody, even though the kid is not walking around, may not be walking around cognitively thinking that. It just prepare for that. They were like, never thought of it that way. And I had to remind them, I mean, muscle memory is being able to hop on a bicycle and ride it without thinking about it. Flipping your turn signal and turning left without thinking about it. It's the same thing with the memories we have in the body. The body keeps the score, and so it's the hippo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the hippo is very much a big part of the body keeping the score, because it's categorizing and labeling, and we don't even know, like in that situation, like you were saying that, you know, a separation or whatever happened last March, we don't even know. Let's just say, for example, like a lot of people, you know, they switch over their clothes, right? You get the summer clothes out, you know, in the spring, and then in the fall, get your winter clothes out, right? We don't know whether mom or dad or whoever was switching out, you know, putting the summer clothes out, got their shorts out, all this stuff. And then that an hour later is when they sat down and had the conversation about we're divorcing. And so then this spring, clothes get changed out. The body's like, what is going to, you know, like, what? You know, and so, and I'm just using that as an example. Like,
Right.
you may not be able to trace that back and understand it. And that's not my point of sharing it, is that you'll be able to, you know, pinpoint every single little thing. It's just to recognize when we have a reaction that doesn't seem to match the current circumstances, the present day issue, that's a little bit of a clue that we may not be reacting to what's happening right now. We may actually be happening to something else.
Well, as we come into our almost wrapping up time, I'm glad that you said that, because I did have some quick questions for you. So, a red flag, you could say, or a warning sign, if I am having a larger reaction to something than what is required, that might be a sign that it's related to something else altogether, that the hippo is, the tiger's coming out. So that's kind of like a little warning sign. I'm making a bigger deal out of this than really needs to be. What do we do, or how do we learn? And I know you can't encompass it all in 5 or 6 minutes, but is there any technique we can give to folks to help them to keep that hippo above water just a little bit? So the hippo says, hey, this is the intersection. Bad things happen at this intersection. How do we, before the tiger comes out and vapor locks and Amy pulls over to the side of the road and refuses to go through the intersection, has PTSD shaken reaction, how do you stay present? Is there any tricks that kind of ground you, I guess?
Well, I think it's you know, that if the owl is able to stay present, the owl is the one that will ground, because the owl is the one that's telling you, you know, this isn't the same day, this isn't the same situation, you know, it's all, you know, going to be fine. Like the story I shared about the grandmother that I hugged, and it made me my grandmother, even though there was some sad feeling to it, there was no really tiger involved, because I was safe. It wasn't necessarily a traumatic memory. It was grief, but there was good memory too, right? Because there's a lot of good memory tied with my grandmother. So it wasn't like, you know, I had this huge big reaction. It was just, I noticed it. And so if we can notice things and get curious about them without putting meaning on them and going into the worst case scenario, that's how you slow yourself down, right? That I'm feeling this like kind of grief right now, which really doesn't make sense for the situation. I wonder what the heck is happening, you know? Like, if we can get curious and not judge it and not jump to the feeling and operating out of the feeling space, right? We can operate just out of a curious, you know, stance place. Then I think that's what helps you to slow down, right? That keeps the owl more present. That keeps them communicating, as opposed to flying away or going under the water and let the tiger just run rampant.
So it would almost be when the hippo speaks up before the tiger gets a chance to respond, letting the owl assess the situation. Mm-hmm. So hippo speaks up. This is that intersection where you're going to get killed. Owl, before tiger gets to come out, owl says, hippo, shut up. This is an intersection like any other intersection. We did not die. Nobody tried to kill us. That we're all fine. And so even if the tiger starts getting up a little bit, to have that presence of mind saying, we drive through this intersection every single day, twice a day. It was one time, and it was the driver, not the intersection. So it's almost like you're self-talking. You might have to self-talk that out loud, I guess, verbalize that.
Yeah.
And eventually it becomes an internal mechanism.
I'll share another quick story. So I was working somewhere one time that I had to drive like 45 minutes on a rural road that was like 55 miles per hour. Mm-hmm. And I hit a deer going 55 miles an hour. And of course, that's scary. And then get the car fixed. A month later, hit another deer. Same car, almost same spot, same road, but a little bit by a mile down. No, wasn't hurt. No other cars involved, no people killed, nothing like that. I know at least one of the deer was killed. I don't know about the other one, but didn't think anything of it, right? Get the car fixed again, go on. And then one night we're picking up my car when we had left it somewhere to go somewhere. We come back to get my car. And so my husband drops me off at my car, and there's like a deer in this person's yard. Then there was another deer in this driveway. And then there was a deer over here in this field. So literally like within this mile. And I could even still remember this huge buck standing at the end of a person's driveway. And I can just see the hunters out there were just drooling. I could see this. And I started to have a panic attack. I started to hyperventilate. And so I pulled my car over and I did that self-talk. I'm like, Amy, those deer were all off the side of the road. You're fine. Those accidents happened a long time ago. You're okay. And I had seen deer since those accidents and things like that, and have ever since then too. I think it was an overload because it was like deer after deer after deer after deer, and I hit my window of tolerance capacity. Deer, and it just, that memory of the fear and the panic when something jumps out in front of your car so fast and you're going fast, it just wasn't like, it wasn't able to be suppressed any longer. The hippo was like really like deer after deer after deer after deer. Like, okay, there's a sign, you're gonna hit one. I know you're gonna hit one. It's gonna happen. So again, sometimes memories may be just fine and there's no problem, but then you get this overload of whatever the stimulus is, and it was over the top of your cup, right? The cup was over. And so, but for me, and this was after becoming like a therapist, so if I had not known about this, I may not have like been able to talk myself down, or I may have, maybe I might have had a car accident because I was, having a panic attack while driving, but I was present enough to say, I know what's going on here. So I'm going to pull over, take some deep breaths, slow my breathing down, talk myself down from this. And I was able to.
I think the hippocampus doesn't get enough attention, and that poor little hippo, because I could imagine now, and I don't want to go too far off on it, but I could imagine now there's probably people walking around in a high alert state, on edge, with anxiety, stress, whatever it is they're feeling every single day. And it might simply be, and I don't mean to oversimplify it, they have a lot of memory in that hippo they haven't looked at. There's a lot of things they may not know. They may be working a job that's similar to a classroom where they experience trauma, and they think it's a job that, so nobody else is overwhelmed by a job, but you are. But so I really think for those people that are in counseling, here we go. If you're out there and you're in therapy someplace, bring this up to your therapist. Ask them to poke around in your hippo and see what your hippo's got there.
Yeah.
Because tiger and owl are so obvious. Hippo, though, is right there. That's really like a linchpin.
Well, and I want to give the caveat, though, because a lot of people think that the only way to heal trauma or to fix trauma is to relive all those memories, right? To bring everything up, tell the stories. That is not true, and that it can sometimes be harmful.
Right.
It's more the impact of trauma. So I didn't sit there and heal whatever the traumatic memory I had from hitting those deer was. Right. In the moment, I reminded myself that I was safe and okay, and nothing bad was happening right now.
Right.
I didn't go into some long drawn out thing about, and I still do not consider hitting those deer as traumatic memories, but my body, obviously remembers that, and that's scary. So I don't necessarily think of it as and I've hit a deer since then here, living where I live now. They're all over the place again. And so, and didn't have a panic attack when that happened, when I hit a deer here. So, within the last couple of years. So again, did that sort of, did it take the marker off the memory? I don't know. Maybe it did. But there are ways to take those markers off of memories if you need to, because we don't always want to take them off. Some of them we need, right? Like you want the marker that says if you don't look both ways, you might get hit by a car. We want that marker on there. Right? So going ripping off markers, that's not a good idea.
Well, again, it's just another part of the brain that's there to protect us and keep us alive. It's not a bad part at all. Okay, so follow us on Facebook. You can see us on the YouTube channel. You can join the Regulation Revolution. You can tune into us at Spotify. Once again, we welcome your comments, your criticisms, your critique, your suggestions for any future podcasts.
We need the hippo. We need suggestions for David the hippo.
We need suggestions. That's right. We need suggestions for naming the hippo. So you can put that out there as well. And I guess until we meet again down the road, Amy, thank you, and thank Hippo, whatever.
Hippo, who soon to be named Hippo.
Soon to be named Hippo. Thanks again, folks. We will tune in with you next time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Following program includes stories and situations that are not intended to identify any client or individual. Any similarities are coincidental and should not be considered reflective of any one person or group of people. The preceding program in no way constitutes therapeutic counseling and does not establish a therapeutic relationship or offer any premise of confidentiality with any listener or participant. If you or someone you know is in need of counseling services and reside in the Commonwealth of Virginia, please visit us at heartmindrva.com for more information.